This is a story about what happens when loving relationships turn into something deadly. This video is intended for educational and documentary purposes. The content within this video contains themes that some individuals may consider triggering, offensive, or disturbing. The intent is not to disrespect viewers or any individual spoken about herein. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha if you've never been here before. This is going to be another uncensored video, and if you are not interested in cannibalism, I would turn back now. This story is about Catherine Mary Knight. She was born October 24th in 1955 in New South Wales, Australia. From the start, Catherine's childhood was nothing less than chaotic. She was actually born as a result of a scandalous affair between her mother Barbara and her father Ken Knight. Barbie and Ken, I noticed. Catherine's mother already had 4 kids with her husband Jack. At the time, they lived in a very small conservative town of Aberdeen, and Barbara actually met Ken Knight through her husband because they were co-workers. So she was having this affair with one of her husband's friends that he actually introduced her to. Having a child out of wedlock these days is totally different than what it used to be like. And this caused major backlash, and it forced Barbara and Ken to move to a different town. Catherine had to leave town with the man she had an affair with and left all 4 of her children behind. 2 of them were staying with their father, and the other 2 were sent to live with their aunt. Catherine's mom ended up having 4 additional children with Ken, and Catherine was actually the younger one of twin daughters that were born in 1955. Unfortunately, her husband Jack died in 1959, and the 2 boys that were living with him moved into Barbara's and Ken's home. Life in this household was brutal. Ken was an alcoholic who regularly used violence and raped Barbara multiple times a day in front of their kids. Barbara would complain to her daughter about hating sex and men, which is totally understandable. And then Catherine herself claims that she was sexually assaulted by different family members until the age of 11. So it's probably no surprise that Catherine grew up with complete distrust and hatred towards men. The only person that Catherine felt close to was her twin and her uncle Oscar Knight, but he committed suicide in 1969, leaving Catherine devastated. We actually see that common theme with a lot of the murders we talk about, that they either lose a family member or someone close to them who they used to confide in, who supported them, and something does change in them after this happens. Catherine not only had problems at home, but she also had problems at school, and she grew up to be a loner. She was known as a bully who terrorized small children. She also seemed to have these random, uncontrollable moments of rage, and she even assaulted one boy at school with a weapon. When Catherine was normal, she was described as a model student and often earned awards for her excellent behavior. However, she never learned to read or to write, and she dropped out of high school at the age of 15. Catherine's first job was in a clothing factory, but after only 12 months, she left to start what she called her dream job in the meatworking industry at a local slaughterhouse. Catherine loved her job. She was so proud of actually getting her very own set of butcher knives. It's an interesting thing to be proud of, but she was so proud. She hung the knives over her bed. They would always be handy if I needed them. Why would you need to use butcher knives above your bed? I think we're going to find out. Catherine ended up marrying a man named David in 1974. Sadly, David struggled with alcoholism because he had witnessed some fatal incidents in his past. He had lost his railroad job, and he ended up working at the same slaughterhouse as Catherine. But Catherine was strong-willed and violent, and she completely dominated David from the beginning. Catherine's own mother warned David about Catherine's temper, saying, quote, "You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you." And her mother also said, quote, "She's got a screw loose somewhere." So that's saying a lot if the mother is trying to warn you. Mothers know best, right? And Barbara wasn't wrong, because on their wedding night, Catherine tried to kill David by strangling him because he fell asleep during sex. And she later said it was because, quote, they only had intercourse 3 times. Despite this attempted murder, and the fact that the marriage was constantly violent, the couple stayed together for 10 years. Somewhere along the way, they made the decision to have children of their own. Was this a good decision? You tell me. Because against what you may have thought about, her getting pregnant and possibly settling down and becoming calmer, Catherine didn't. Not in the slightest. On one occasion while Catherine was pregnant, she decided to burn all of David's clothes and shoes before hitting him on the back of the head with a frying pan. David ran to a neighbor's house, fearing for his life, before collapsing. His skull was severely fractured, and still, he didn't press charges against Catherine because once again, she said she was going to change her behavior, and she was able to talk to David and talk him out of it. The couple's daughter, Melissa Ann, was born in 1976, and soon after, David decided that he had had enough. He left Catherine for another woman and he moved away. This abandonment definitely didn't sit well with Catherine, and she was actually seen in public violently shaking her newborn baby in the stroller. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, even though I think there were a lot of other things going on, and she was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital. Catherine was there for several weeks, and then right after her release, she placed her 2-month-old infant on the train tracks right before a train was going to come through. At this point, she was arrested and she was again taken to St. Elmo's Hospital, but this time she signed herself out the following day. Just days later, Catherine grabbed her knife collection, she slashed a stranger in the face and demanded that they drive her to Queensland. The woman was able to escape, but Catherine also managed to take a little boy hostage and threaten him with a knife. Yeah, her mother was right. She definitely had a screw loose somewhere. Police were then able to disarm her, and she was admitted to another psychiatric hospital. The nurses at this hospital would later tell how they had to listen to Catherine planning to butcher a mechanic who had fixed David's car. And as a result of the car being fixed, David was able to leave her. She definitely wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. Maybe it's you. She said that she would kill David and his mother when she arrived in Queensland. Now, I know what you're gonna think, but David took Catherine back when she was released from the hospital in March of 1980 for unknown reasons, and the couple had a second child. Nonetheless, the marriage came to a final end in 1984. But after the breakup, Catherine had 2 other abusive relationships in which she would, for example, hit and stab her partner with scissors. Yeah. And she also cut the throat of her partner's 2-month-old puppy in front of him, just to show him an example of what would happen if he ever had an affair.
It was a plain cut, Daisy.
At this point, Catherine was with her 3rd boyfriend. His name was John Chillingworth. And Catherine herself was having an affair. She was having an affair with a man named John Price. Don't get confused. So 2 Johns. John Chillingworth, John Price. Chillingworth is the boyfriend. Price, he may pay the price, is the one she's having an affair with. And then she eventually left Chillingworth behind, and she ultimately had a relationship just with John Price. John Price was born and raised in Aberdeen, and he was very familiar with Catherine's reputation, but that didn't stop him from letting Catherine move in with him in 1995. Even though Catherine said she was going to change a long time ago, nothing changed. The relationship became violent when she tried to get John to marry her. And to make it easy, she stole his money and bought her own wedding ring. When John refused to marry her, this enraged Catherine. She decided to take revenge by reporting John to his employer. And I don't know the specifics of what exactly she said, but whatever she said caused his 17-year career to come to an end. At this point, John kicked Catherine out of the house just to get back together with her a few months later. This was definitely some kind of fatal attraction. The fighting became even more frequent, and in February of 2000, Catherine stabbed John in the chest. He finally realized he was in real danger. It took that much, but all he did was file a restraining order, and we know those aren't exactly that effective. He filed a restraining order on February 29th, but he was told that the process could take a few weeks. That same day, John mentioned to his friends and his coworkers that if he didn't show up to work the next morning, it was because Catherine had killed him. And at that point, he would have no idea how right he was. That night, Catherine came home late while John was already sleeping. She had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house so that the two of them would be alone. She woke John up and the two had sex before John fell back to sleep. Catherine had been getting ready for this moment for a while. She sharpened her precious butcher knives that she would now use on her sleeping partner. John woke up to Catherine striking him again and again with a 7-inch blade. In his terror, he got up and he tried to escape, running all around the house, leaving behind an abundance of blood. You're going to see this, so if you're queasy, I'm sorry. Catherine eventually overpowered him, stabbing him altogether 37 times. She pierced vital organs and John did not have a chance. But this just wasn't enough for Catherine, because several hours later, she used her slaughterhouse skills to skin John completely before decapitating him. Catherine dumped the head in a big pot with vegetables and cooked parts of John's body. She then served up the meat, placed on 2 plates with baked potatoes, pumpkin, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy. She even set 2 name cards with the names of John's children on them on the dinner table, as if she was serving this father to his children. After she finished cooking, Catherine took John's body, or what was left of it, and sat him in his favorite chair and crossed his legs like he was sitting there at the dinner table. Even though she's often labeled as a cannibal, Catherine herself never ate a piece of John Price. Instead, she took a handful of pills in an attempt to kill herself that night. Then she laid down next to John's lifeless, headless body and passed out, but she didn't die. John's neighbor had began to suspect that there was something going on because John's car was still in the driveway. The neighbor went over to the house and knocked on his door to check on him when he saw blood on the doorknob. He then notified the police and they came immediately. Catherine was charged with John Price's murder in 2001, but she initially pleaded not guilty. She said that she doesn't remember anything from the night, but she later changed her plea to guilty, not giving any reason why, and the jury was dismissed. Despite pleading guilty, Catherine never really admitted to the crime and still refused to accept any responsibility for her actions.
I don't remember anything.
Do you recall yourself going to bed?
Finally.
She was then diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and that possibly contributed to her decision to kill John. But she was not legally insane, so is that really an excuse? I know there is a stigma when it comes to mental health, and borderline personality disorder is a disorder that has a lot of stigma behind it. But not all individuals who are suffering with symptoms of borderline end up killing people. So I don't see that as a valid reason. And we're going to talk about another case very soon where that could also have played a part. But nevertheless, because of her lack of remorse and the gruesome crime, the judge actually sentenced Catherine to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. She was actually the first and only woman in Australia's history to receive that sentence. And then she tried to appeal her life sentence in June of 2006, saying that the penalty was too severe compared to the crime. What do you think? The appeal was quickly dismissed by Justice McClellan, saying, quote, "This was an appalling crime almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society." Now, Catherine is in her early 60s and she's serving her sentence at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center. Well, that's it. That's all I have for this uncensored video and story of this gruesome crime. I hope you enjoyed as much as you can enjoy a story like this. Thank you so much for all of your suggestions and all of your comments. I love getting to know each and every one of you. I try to answer as many as I can. And again, thank you so very much for watching. I will see you in my next video.